All right, I am back with a Destiny 2 video, and this time we are talking about something pretty serious. You probably know what it is. It is the IGN article by Rebecca Valentine that is a deep dive into Bungie's culture over its lifespan and the many, many problems that has resulted from that. We have seen this type of article come out about a number of companies, and Bungie's article is a little different in terms of what it covers and the kind of action that Bungie has taken to remedy it. It's tough to read as a fan of Destiny and Bungie, obviously, but I obviously wasn't going to just ignore this and move on. I definitely think both everyone should read it and that it is worth commenting on. I do not have a hot take on this. This is bad. It's a bad article full of a lot of very clear and deep-seated issues with Bungie, and it is tough to know what people have experienced kind of behind the scenes to make the game. This is not quite Activision's, someone was, the really horrific stuff out of the Activision lawsuit that is resulting in, a ton of action against them and industry-wide boycotts to a certain extent, and like them being blacklisted from a lot of places. And this doesn't seem like this is going to result in that type of thing, and yet obviously it is worth very much paying attention to this, very much hearing everyone, even if these issues are brought up anonymously for the most part, because it's just because it's your favorite studio or your favorite game or whatever, you don't get a free pass. The kind of thrust of the article is that a lot of the kind of most egregious stuff took place further in the past. Some of it is mentioned in the Halo era. Some of it is more towards the beginning of Destiny's life cycle, both through Destiny 1 and then maybe the beginning of Destiny 2. There seems to be some sort of turning point around, I'd say, maybe 2018, where Bungie kind of really started taking proactive action in order to address some of these issues and get some of these toxic people out and make more strides for diversity and inclusivity. And just there's a whole lot of issues. So among the main things that are brought up here, we run into the unfortunate problem that pretty much any major video game development studio that has been around as long as Bungie has is going to have some pretty deep-seated issues with a bunch of straight white guys making everyone else feel uncomfortable, whether that is inappropriate jokes in the workplace, or it could be just talking over female workers, or not taking their inputs, or kind of creating like an insular boys club kind of feel. All of this stuff is brought up and mentioned here. There seem to have been very particular issues involving the narrative team, where a lot of like higher ups and former leads, most of them are former leads, get brought up in here, but I don't really think anyone is named here that I can recall, and I'm not going to start speculating about who they might be talking about in this situation or that situation. That gets into dangerous territory, and like even if the IGN article didn't name them, you don't really want to start just throwing names around of like people that used to work at Bungie that you might think did something. If that comes out through the course of investigation, that's another thing, but I am not going to speculate on that. I just want to highlight that these people went through these issues. The stuff with the narrative team is really tough. There were a number of issues where a narrative lead was like pretty much yelling at people and throwing papers and things, and he would get very, very upset when they were trying to do things in Destiny 2 that would contradict his Destiny 1 writing. There was a specific example of something kind of Bungie management did, where there was a line where Devrim K refers to his partner, and they took it out before the game was released and called it a bug fix. And then eventually the narrative writers just turned it into Mark. He references someone called Mark, which is a pretty guy's name, but it was a way they kind of like slipped it in there. Bungie was worried about not being able to sell the game in certain regions that would like disallow an in-game same-sex relationship. But the other issue is that all the stuff with Devrim, like everyone knew kind of Devrim was gay when Destiny came out and he started talking about Mark and stuff, and it was pretty obvious. And then Bungie kind of took credit for, oh, look, like we're inclusive. We included a gay NPC or something, when internally they were really trying to push back on that. It also speaks to the fact of how much things have changed over the years, I guess, really in terms of the narrative team in particular in this situation, DMG and Cosmo both commented on this publicly, saying that they were sorry they didn't give enough support to the narrative team during the worst of these times here, and they should have been there for them more. DMG, I think, said people were like crying in meetings because of how they were being treated about this, and it's really interesting to view this in context now, because obviously, like, a lot of these old narrative guard people are gone. I know a lot of the new narrative team currently and for this past year or few years have been, a lot of them are women. A lot of them are not straight white males. They are, there is a more diverse collection of people. And I think a lot of people were trying to give me crap on Twitter for promoting diversity as like making the game better, but like it clearly has. Like diversity in the workplace always brings more perspectives to the table, and your product benefits because of that. Destiny, to me, seems like a very clear-cut case of that working, where they brought in more perspectives, and over time, Destiny has gotten a lot better of a story. How does that work? Like, that's what happens when you kind of open teams up and don't have one guy yelling at everyone on the narrative team for trying to do their thing. It also really reminds me of how, in the past year or so, Bungie has been pretty adamant about confirming that Saint and Osiris are in a same-sex relationship, and they are space married essentially, and they are like the Destiny power couple. To me, this is still a little odd, because like it is very, very heavily strongly indicated in the game, but I do wonder if they still have to toe the line of explicitness again in regard to like, can we sell this game in other countries, whereas like out of game the narrative writers have confirmed like, yes, Saint and Osiris are partners. So I do wonder if some of that may still be going on there. Past the narrative stuff, there was the issue of crunch. Bungie was working 80, 90, 100-hour weeks, and we've heard some of this in the past. Like, we didn't maybe really know the full extent of it, but we've heard that the past pace of content they were making, both in terms of when they were doing like double DLCs a year for Destiny 1, or when they were doing that at the beginning of Destiny 2, and they were doing these huge like Season of Opulence style seasons and raids every 2 seasons. During that year, that it was like unsustainable, and that's kind of how we moved to the seasonal model. And it does say that crunch has been lessened, but it is very clear that some very, very brutal crunch went into Destiny. And then there were just kind of general HR issues, where issues about harassment or mismanagement or verbal abuse or all of these different issues that were coming up would get brought up to HR, and essentially nothing would really happen with them. Pete Parsons was called out in particular, the CEO of Bungie, for, people would send notes to him directly and he would just not respond to them. The response from Bungie to this article has been interesting in the context of kind of how we see these other studios respond sometimes. Like, Activision came out and was like really crazily defensive to the point where it really upset the entire workforce. That does not really seem to be what's happening with Bungie here. Like, certainly people are upset about this, but it's more like, we're so proud of our coworkers for coming forward. All of these issues are real. I believe all my coworkers. And then the management, Pete Parsons, issued a really, really long response to IGN's article that he no doubt had prepared before this, because they contacted him for comment and he knew he was going to have to say something. He's not really making excuses for the past, and he's not discounting anyone's stories. And the interesting part about this is that it seems like Bungie recognized their own problems before this article came out. Like, granted, that was pretty recently. Again, it seems like 2018, 2019, somewhere around there. So it's only been maybe the last couple of years when they really kind of kick things into gear about getting a lot of these toxic people out. I mean, that has happened, over the course of a long time, but that seems to be kind of a thing they have been working on for a few years now, rather than like, oh crap, someone published an article about us, like, we better, start cleaning house, which is obviously exactly what Activision Blizzard did. That said, like, I there's not like a happy ending here. It's, one of the key components of the piece is like, yes, they have made progress, but there is still a long way to go. You're seeing a lot of current Bungie employees saying there is still a long way to go, even though, yes, things have improved, and yes, Bungie is trying to be that studio that makes strides in that direction. What's felt weird, I guess, recently was that they were making like these big condemnations of Activision Blizzard, and people felt that was a little disingenuous when they were at least dealing with some of the same issues as Activision Blizzard or had in the past, and Bungie has kind of held itself up as like, we're better than this. This isn't us, and like, but like, it is them, or at least has been them for a long time to a certain extent, and that kind of vocalization has rung hollow for a lot of the workers there. And again, like, these problems are not over. Like, I was interested to see Nicole Olsen, who was the Destiny community manager for not super long, but she just left the company, and I just kind of assumed she got another job. But she chimed in today talking about her issue seemed to be, I think it was equal pay, where she was trying to maybe request higher pay for the job, for the region she lived in, and that was not met, so she left her job, and she's going to get another job apparently. So that those are still issues like that pay disparity with women and not enough women in senior roles, things like that, that are still going on literally like to this day, essentially. So it's a tough situation, and it's very messy, but it is also not surprising. A company that is this old with this kind of history, like, it is not remotely surprising that it has had to deal with a lot of these issues. And I wondered if an article would come out like this about Bungie someday, but I do think they have at least the foresight to have recognized these problems kind of before this whole like current expose thing really started happening with company after company. And you really see these, one thing I've seen a lot of women say on Twitter in response to this, or in response to all of these, is like, this is how it is for women pretty much everywhere, like in especially large companies, but they're overlooked, they are underpaid, they are talked over, they are sexually harassed, they are verbally abused by management, like, and disproportionately this happens more to women and people of color. Yes, if you are a white straight dude, you can be yelled at and made to feel bad at your job too. It is just disproportionately those issues affect women and people of color a lot more than people like me, and that should be recognized. So all we can really do is try to elevate those voices who are speaking up. I really think you should read this whole article. I definitely think everyone who plays Destiny should read it. I know there will be a contingent of people that are going to, use this to troll Bungie forever, probably disingenuously. But I don't think it should be used as a cudgel to roast the community managers when you don't like something in the game now. Like, it's a serious issue, and it needs to be taken seriously, and Bungie has a lot of internal work to do about this, and we have to keep them accountable and demand better from them as a community. But a lot of this work is going to have to be done internally, and will have very little to do with us. There was one thing that I'm remembering now, is that I think they said on Reddit people were harassing the female writers of Trials of Osiris to the point where they were feeling horrible about it, and instead of the community embrace, or the community managers or community department or their bosses and supporting them and backing them, they said someone was even sending those Reddit threads to their higher ups to prove that these women did this job wrong. So this is where we as a community can help in terms of not targeting specific people at Bungie for harassment. That is not good, and that happens obviously to this day. I worry about the poor sanity of our community team for how much crap they get, so just be aware of that when these kind of issues come up. So it's tough, and I know that a lot of people are going to be disappointed with this, and yet it is hard to be kind of fully surprised. Bungie needs to be held accountable. Bungie needs to continue making the improvements that they've already started to make. But all of this history deserves to be exposed and explored and addressed directly. And we will see. I am curious to see kind of what comes of this specifically. They've already put the Game to Give charity event on hold because DMG said they didn't want to make it look like they were, trying to do some charity and distract from things, or they didn't want the people who are doing the charity stream to be harassed about the article, things like that. So there's already some kind of action coming. We are about to head into the holiday break here where, everyone's going to get some time off. So that might be kind of a period of reflection there. But I would not be surprised to see some concrete steps maybe announced for 2022 and beyond. We've seen stuff like this periodically as time goes on. There's, all those groups a Bungie created, Black at Bungie, Trans at Bungie, things like that. And those seems to have been created in the era where like Bungie was trying to improve and Bungie was trying to better support, its minority staff who are leaving at too high a proportion and not being supported enough. So hopefully we see kind of more stuff in that vein. And yeah, we'll see what happens next. But so far, I think the responses have been appropriate given the context of the situation. And job well done to Rebecca Valentine. This is an excellently reported piece. And everyone should absolutely check it out. I will have a link to that in my description here. So anyway, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.